So this is the Chapter 9, Segment 3 outline, and Chapter 9 is memory. So going back a little bit to give some context where we pick up on page 371, the small section is talking about how several psychological phenomena indicate that forgetting is probably due to failure and retrieval. And the first definition we talk about is context-dependent retrieval, which is the improved ability to retrieve information when the conditions of the original learning are reproduced. Now, this is why some people believe that some students prefer to take exams or tests for a class in the same room or place where the lectures are given. And some people even want to sit in the exact same seats. It's this comfortable environment and the environment in which you learn the material that shows to have an improved ability in being able to retrieve that information. Now, the next section is memory is susceptible to distortion. So, looking at memory trace, which is the actual physical record of a memory made in the brain by a learning experience, they don't simply deteriorate from disuse in the passage of time. Instead, there seems to be good evidence that memories tend to distort or suffer from interference from events beforehand and after the event. And so, in fact, each time a memory trace is activated during recall, it's subject to changes and fluctuations. So that with successive remembrances, or as the book likes to call it, activations, the memory may deviate more from the truth and more from its original form. So, memory distortion is, that offers one explanation for why people sometimes honestly remember events that never happened. And this can lead into the misinformation effect, which is the susceptibility of our memory to incorporate false details that fit in. And in a famous experiment, researchers gathered information about a past event, and they took a family member of participants and they purposefully entered false details about the story in its retelling. And after providing like a written description of the event to the participants and probing about other details, these researchers found it relatively easy to plant a false memory in these participants, specifically a false memory of meeting Bugs Bunny at a Disney resort, which could never happen because Bugs Bunny is not a Disney character and therefore would not be found at a Disney park. But for the participants, recollecting that early event somehow made it open to distortion. So now they remembered something that never actually happened. And this can get tricky with recovered memories and the possibility of planting false memories in people. So this gets tricky when we talk about recovered memories of people who feel like they suffered childhood sexual or physical abuse. Controversial hypnotic methods to retrieve memories, which was talked about in Chapter 7 in the Consciousness chapter, can be seen as problematic just because our memory can be so easily manipulated. And some people may be more susceptible to the misinformation effect than others. And another type of memory that can lead to distortion is flashbulb memories. So these are vivid, detailed memories of a momentous event. So in the 21st century, a flashbulb memory for many people is September 11th, 2001, and the terrorist attacks. It's called a flashbulb memory because it seems like time stops and it's like the light of a camera flash that lights up a dark scene, and suddenly vivid details are remembered. For some people, another example given is the assassination of JFK. Some people have distinct memories of where they were on that day when they found out the news or maybe heard of the event. For some reason, these moments tend to stick with us. Because we tend to recall and recount flashbulb memories or these oftentimes traumatic or very monumental events, they benefit from rehearsal more than ordinary memories we may have. And this frequent rehearsal makes them more subject to distortion. Some people might report having vivid, detailed memories and are very confident about these details, but with further examination, it may find that these are not accurate details. So, one interesting study took American college students, and they were asked to remember where they were when the O.J. Simpson verdict was announced. And this was 15 months prior to the experiment being held. And so the students reported vivid, very detailed memories and were very confident. And then the same students were polled again 17 months later, and they were again to report the same vivid, detailed memories that they had. But in most cases, the details were very different. One student even reported having watched the news on TV in a college lounge with his friends, but later reported having been home with his sister and his father. So, self-reports and flashbulb memories are seen as just as unreliable as normal memories. So we see all these examples of why our memory isn't as good as we often think, and so a reasonable question might be, how can you improve your memory? And it's not really surprising to find out that one of the best ways to improve your memory and learning new material is repeated retrieval, or repeated consolidation of stored information. So, recall is enhanced when new material that you must learn and remember consists of related information. So sometimes learning how to make connections with things you are learning, and this leads into mnemonic devices, which are methods of helping to memorize information. And one famous kind of mnemonic device way to help memory is chunking. So your memory, your short-term memory, can only hold so much information at one certain time. So chunking allows you to be able to compact certain things together to help you remember more items. And another mnemonic device or technique that is often used to improve memory is the method of Loki. So this is a mnemonic device where each item of a list is imagined in a separate location in a familiar space. So it draws upon our knowledge of the rooms in a house, or maybe shops on a street, and it has us imagine how we may see things in a list as we are traveling through this location. So it may help you remember a list of words, and putting this visual sense to it oftentimes helps people remember a list of information. Now, there was a trick that Freud actually suggested for the tip of the tongue phenomenon, is when we feel that we can almost say aloud the word we are trying to remember, or we know what it is, but you can't just quite articulate it. And for example, if you can't remember somebody's name and you feel like you know it, Freud suggested that you just keep saying names at random. Whatever name comes to mind, say it out loud. And he noted that sometimes the supposedly random names will in fact begin with the same letter as the ones you're trying to remember. And sometimes this hint of saying different names can help you actually retrieve the name you are thinking of. Sometimes this hint about how the names begin can help retrieve the whole name. In other cases, the random names or words will bear some other relationship to the name or word we're groping for, such as it might be a rhyming or historically related. So Freud didn't offer an explanation as to why this would work or the connection between the two things, but sometimes it can be the case that the reason the random names begin with the same letter or the random words have some relation is that you've activated a web of memories that are related to one another. And that's how randomization or saying random things can help you remember something, because you have a connection. Now, going into section 9.3, we're going to talk about different forms of long-term memory, and specifically looking at clinical studies. And clinical case studies show that memory can fail in several different ways, indicating that there are different forms of memory and that multiple brain regions are involved. So there's basic amnesia, which is a severe impairment of memory. More specifically, there's retrograde amnesia, which is amnesia for events occurring prior to an event, typically a trauma. And this is not uncommon after surgery or trauma. So, for example, the chauffeur that was driving in the accident that killed Princess Diana said that he couldn't remember what had happened in the final few moments leading up to the crash. So he had retrograde amnesia for that brief period of time, and it likely resulted from the trauma, and that he could not the damage to his brain caused him to lose track of the events before he could record them permanently into his memory. Going back to a person discussed at the beginning of the chapter, patient HM, Henry Molson, he had bilateral medial temporal lobe damage and could not form new explicit memories. So he had anterograde amnesia, which is amnesia for events occurring after event, such as trauma. So over a very short term, Henry's memory was normal, and different cases provided clear evidence that his short-term memory was fine, and that short-term memory of the sort is what we use to carry a conversation, and that differs from our long-term memory that's needed to learn facts, which if he was given a list of words to study, his short-term memory is fine, but then if he was tested on them after intervening tasks, he could not be able to repeat the list or list any sort of, or even recall that there was a list of words. So the hippocampus is required to put some memories into long-term memory elsewhere in the brain. So there's the that is actually supposed to be medial, not medical, temporal lobe, and that's the innermost portion of the temporal lobe, which includes the hippocampus and neighboring cortex. And the hippocampus is a part of the limbic system that is crucial to the formation of permanent memories. So the one thing that was surprising or different about Henry was that he was the first case that had the medial temporal lobe removed from both sides, and this leads into different types of memory between motor and verbal performance, and there's declarative memory and non-declarative memory. So declarative memory is facts or information acquired through learning that can be stated or described, and non-declarative memory is a memory about perceptual or motor procedures that is demonstrated by performance. So to put the distinction between the two types of memory, declarative memory deals with what, and non-declarative memory deals with